All right, Caleb, let's get to your week 2 already recap. What do you got, sir? And set up that poll question you can when you have a second.
All right, I'm doing that right now. So what stood out from week 2 of college football to you guys? Was it the Notre Dame upset loss? Was it Colorado collapsing? Or was it elite programs like Oregon struggle? So that's my, and I could have thrown Oregon or Alabama or, just any of those teams that you want
Well,
we'll get to that.
I have to be honest, okay, because what did I tell you last week? I said, I'm now on the Marcus Freeman bandwagon, okay, because of what they did to Texas A&M. Now, I didn't think Freeman was a good hire at the time because he's a player's coach, and he had some just devastatingly bad losses before that were very similar in times that they didn't play well when they came back at home. He's the only coach I know that doesn't play well as well at home as he does elsewhere. So I can't say that one because I told you last week that I thought Marcus Freeman, their coach, was better than I originally thought. So I guess I have to, in retrospect, I guess I have to pick that one. It wouldn't have been surprising at all to me before they beat Texas A&M. Colorado collapsing was not a surprise to me. Elite programs like Oregon struggling, that was surprising. But let's face it, Notre Dame losing, I don't know who watched the end of that game, but they not only got the most crazy favorable spot in the history of man. Did you watch the end of that game?
Oh, yeah. No, I saw the end of that game.
Okay.
It was
and they forgot to wind the clock. So Notre Dame had a timeout that Marcus Freeman is still carrying around with him somewhere in South Bend because he never ended up using it. But he had an extra timeout and needed it. So they tried their best to give that to him, and he still couldn't win it. So I will have to say that was my most surprising thing that happened over the weekend. That's the first time NIU's ever beaten a top 10 ranked opponent.
Yeah, Notre Dame is number one on my takeaways. That's my first one. And basically what I said, Dave, is Notre Dame pulls a Notre Dame. This has been the story of Notre Dame since the 90s, right? The second you think they're back to what they once were, they drop a game that they shouldn't drop. They usually do it during the week of midterms. But for those who don't know, Notre Dame keeps their players on the same academic standards, regardless of whether or not they're athletes. Every other school makes exceptions, but Notre Dame won't, which is why Urban Meyer, as you know, Dave, did not take the Notre Dame job in 2005. Didn't he basically say, guys, I need you to loosen these for the players, and they wouldn't do it? I think he wanted Notre Dame over Florida.
Could be. I'm not ruling that out. The one thing I'm ruling out is that Notre Dame should be in the college football playoff. You can't lose a game like that. However, their schedule's so easy that it's set up to manufacture ways to get them in. All right, so what's next on your wrap-up?
Well, this is the underrated thing. And Dave, I'm having to concede something, and I hate having to concede something. But this is something that the expanded college football playoff has added value to. Group of 5 games are so much more entertaining now because they carry weight for that last college football playoff spot. Like Northern Illinois now has the inside track to be the group of 5 team to go to the playoff because they beat Notre Dame. I was watching Boise State, Oregon Saturday night. Boise State was really trying to win that game because they want to be the top group of 5 team in. Memphis is the one top 25 group of 5 team. They play Florida State this week. That game's huge for them now. That used to be like a no pressure game. You play a Power 5 team and lose. But they have pressure on them now, right? Because Northern Illinois just beat Notre Dame. So I'm like, this has made Group of 5 football a lot more fun to watch, and I never thought it would be.
No, I didn't either. I'm still not going to be all over it on a Saturday afternoon. But anyway.
Not between Group of 5 teams, but I'm talking about when a Group of 5 plays a Power 5 team. You're seeing the Group of 5 team put a lot more pressure on themselves to try to win these games than they used to. If they're
Little action. There we go.
Yep. All right, so number 3 is I led with Oregon, but Oregon, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Penn State, they're all concerning. They all should be worrying. They all should be raising the red flag right now and saying, we're in trouble.
Oregon, Alabama, Ohio State, and
Oklahoma and Penn State.
Okay, why?
So Oregon, they barely beat Idaho, and then they struggled to put away Boise State. That's 2 weeks in a row. Penn State, proves that it's something. It's maybe the reason you're not a big fan of James Franklin, but they show they can't handle success. How do you go blow out West Virginia and then you struggle to put away Bowling Green? That's a problem. Oklahoma looks like what we all thought they were as a Brent Venables coach team. Looks like a defensive coordinator struggling to put away a bad Houston team that lost to UNLV. And guys, Alabama, Jalen Milroe is not a fit for that offense. And you guys can debate me on that all day. It will show itself.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody's really debating you right now. I've felt that way all along. If you had to list those teams, who should be the most concerned about what has happened at this point in the season? And if you want to throw in a little bit of eye test, I know you're more analytical. I'm probably a little bit more eye test, but of those, of that group that expects to be in the college football playoff, and every team you just mentioned, their fan base expects to be in the college football playoff, right?
Right. Correct.
Okay. So of that group, which should be the most concerned that they're not going to make it?
Oregon. And I had them winning the Big Ten, but they've looked horrible. I mean, they've looked terrible. Dylan Gabriel is not a Heisman contender to me anymore.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to say that this offense is slightly different than what Dylan Gabriel had run his whole life, and then he's going to get better. So I'm not as worried about Oregon as I am Penn State. And you barely beat Bowling Green. I just don't see a lot of spark, a lot of flash out of that team. They just don't do a lot for me. So I would say that out of that group, and I don't believe in James Franklin. I think he's a player's coach. I think they're going to have up and downs. I don't think Penn State makes a playoff. Who are the other schools again, if you don't mind? Oklahoma. You and I both think that it's a matter of time before the bottom falls out of Oklahoma. The schedule is brutal.
Yes, and then Alabama, the other one. But yeah, Oklahoma's in trouble. So moving on, number 4, it's a part of my poll question, but Colorado hype is over. I will say that I'm going to say this on behalf of Colorado real quick. The problem is the hype was ever there in the first place. If you just looked at this from a projection of Deion Sanders building a program, they're still on track. I mean, 1-11 to 4-8. I thought 6 or 7 wins should have been the goal this year. Losing to Nebraska doesn't change that. And so, I mean, it's over because people put way too much hype behind it to begin with. So, but that doesn't mean that you should totally quit. The only thing I would say is Shedeur is melting down now and throwing his teammates under the bus. He basically said that they asked him why he struggled, and he said the other quarterback didn't get touched in the game on Saturday, which is whenever a quarterback starts blaming his offensive line, they're losing the locker room.
Yes, and I'll add to that. I think that based off some people I've talked to just this weekend, the locker room was already lost. There's a lot of things going on out there, and the chemistry is about as bad as it could be. Caleb, what else in your wrap up?
Well, on the other side of Colorado, Nebraska, I told you guys I believed in Matt Rule, and they're not a title contender this year, but I think Matt Rule will have Nebraska back to where they were back in the heyday in about a year. He's doing a heck of a job with his analytics.
Yeah, but how much do you weigh? I mean, but how much do you weigh the Colorado win?
Well, Colorado beat the brakes off them last year, so they really have improved significantly. I think Nebraska, look, they're not going to be a powerhouse this year, but I think they're going to flirt with the top 25 this year. And
they have similar challenges to Tennessee, and there's not a lot of in-state talent. However, I can see ways Tennessee overcomes that because Atlanta's nearby and because of Neyland Stadium, the facilities and the fan support. Nebraska has some of that, but I just don't see them. I think they're always going to be a has-been.
And you might be right about that. I just think in an era of NIL and now analytics, I actually think there's ways to. I think it's easier for programs in the middle of nowhere to be elite than even it was back then. I think if you find ways to be creative, which, by the way, how was Nebraska creative back then? They had a conditioning program that no one else had. Steroids. But yeah, I think there's ways. Speaking of Tennessee, that's my number 6. Texas and Tennessee joined the ranks of elite. I think there were only 5 clear-cut elite teams in college. Not elite, but 5 clear-cut teams that have proven they should be considered title contenders to this point. That's Texas, Miami, Georgia, USC, Tennessee. I just wanted to add Boston College, Syracuse, Iowa State, Penn State, Northern Illinois is my top 10. My Heisman race is Jackson Dart, Cam Ward, Miller Moss, Cam Scaribo, and Kyle McCord. Michigan is bad, and the SEC is losing too many marquee games.